All right, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Is the representative of District 6 present?
Present.
Thank you. Is the representative of the Hill CDC present?
Present.
Thank you. Is the representative of the Hill District Federal Credit Union present? Is the representative of the Hill District Consensus Group present? I resent her the link, so hopefully Britt is joining us momentarily. Is the representative of the Wesley Center AME Zion Church present? Is the representative of Shenley Heights Community Development Program present?
Present.
And I'm gonna circle back because I do see Britt just joined. Is the representative of the Hill District Consensus Group present?
Yes.
Thank you. Is the representative of the Historic Hill Institute present?
Present.
Thank you. Is the representative of Ujamaa Collective present? Is the representative of the Office of State Rep Ariane Abney present? And the seat for county executive is vacant, so we're going to skip that. Is the representative of the Office of the Mayor present? Lisa, I see your name here.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble also with my Zoom, but yes, I'm here. Hello.
Thank you. Is the representative of the Pittsburgh Public School District present? Is the representative of Allegheny County Council present? And I did see Mr. Witherspoon joined us, so is the representative of the Hill District Federal Credit Union present?
Present.
Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over.
Thank you. I believe that takes us to old business, and I believe we begin with Alerta update.
Yes, thank you, Councilman. James is going to lead this part.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just a few bullet points for an update on the LERTA fund. The fund balance as of January 2nd, 2025 was $7,650,926. Projected future revenue sources are 50% of the owner payment from the Block E2 Lower Hill LERTA, which is the music venue, a share of surface parking revenues, and music venue ticket surcharge. And all of these things are, down the line dependent, or excuse me, the LERTA payment and the music venue surcharge are dependent on the music venue progressing. And that will conclude my update.
Thank you. Were there any questions?
I have a question. I'm sorry, I'm having problems with my Zoom here. James, any recent deposits?
No recent deposits.
Okay, what expenses came out recently?
So the expenses that we have are related to the Hill Home Repair Program. And I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I'm happy to follow up with the group on email to let folks know what the expenditures for Hill Home Repair have been.
Sorry, I was just trying to say thank you.
You're welcome.
I gotta fix this. Something's not right.
James, can you speak briefly to the 50% of the owner payment from the Block E2 Lower Hill LERTA? Can you speak a little more about timeline on that? Maybe I missed it. I'm sorry. I was trying to get my technical situation together.
No problem. Yes, so from a timeline perspective, Block E2 went through the closing process with the URA and SEA last year towards the end of last year. So now what happens is they need to go through construction to build the music venue. And then after the music venue construction is completed, the property will be reassessed. And at that time, there will be a new assessed value associated with the property. And that's how we'll do the calculation to determine what's the owner payment under the LRTA.
Mhm.
And so, I think, I don't want to try to be too aggressive on a timeline, but assuming it's about 48 to, 36 to 48 month construction period. I think, you're maybe looking at 2027, 2028 for the owner payments to come in.
Okay. And do you have a projection of what those payments will be and when?
Yes, so I know during the process for advancing Block E2, we did talk about the projections, and I believe they're around $250,000 per year, and that would be each year of the 10-year LRTA period.
Okay. And then on the LRTA fund, another item that, Alicia, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, I just want to make sure I heard James correctly. James, you were saying that this will not come in now until after the music venue is completed, not upon the sale. So we're going to be waiting, and I realize it's a rough line, but 48 to 38 construction months from now. Is that what you're saying? So it has been moved? Okay.
So there's just a little more nuance to it. And please forgive me for not having the exact details, but I recall, during the process of moving forward with E2, there was an issue with high interest rates that would essentially impact the amount of money that was going to be available to the fund, as opposed to what would be needed to fund the interest payment on a loan. So I'll try to, make this simplified, but for Block G, the F&B tower, they were able to monetize that LRTA payment up front. And, with interest rates at the time as high as they had been, the amount of owner payment that would be going to pay back interest was very high. And so moving forward, the process was to take the owner payment as it becomes available, or at a time when interest rates are more favorable. And they are getting towards that area, but I do not believe they are, favorable at this particular point.
Okay. There's another item that, any other questions on that specific topic? Okay, there is another item that some advisory members may recall, and that is that the Buccini Polling Group owes 300 something, 300,000 some odd dollars to the fund. Because if you all recall, when they monetized the upfront LRTA payment on Block G1, they essentially billed the community fund for the closing costs, if you all recall that. It was a concerning issue at the time. And so we asked for documentation as a part of their financial closing to ensure that they would actually pay out that balance due, what they essentially what they charge the community for the closing costs, so that those funds could go into the community. And so I wanted to make sure that the committee was apprised of that as an ongoing concern. The commitment was that they would pay out when they secured their occupancy permit for Block G1. As of today, they have secured a partial occupancy permit for Block G1. However, it is unclear to me, and maybe the city or URA has more technical knowledge on this, how long that could possibly be before a full occupancy permit is obtained. And the commitment to the committee was not necessarily that it would be a full or temporary or partial occupancy permit, but that they would pay it out when they secured an occupancy permit. So I wanted to make sure that the committee was aware that that is an ongoing concern and a payment due to the committee, probably right about now. Any questions on that item and any new information from the URA or councilman to give us an update on that?
No, I do not have an update past more than what you provided, Marimba. I am looking into what the issues are outstanding as to why they haven't been able to pull their permanent occupancy permit, and I will certainly provide that information once I have it.
Okay. And does anyone have the exact balance of what that is, or can that come out in email, please? Documenting that amount for the committee. I know that we have it in files from during the financial closing, presumably in May of 2021. But I think it would be important for the committee to be updated on that.
I'll share that number via email after the meeting.
Thank you, Julia.
Mm-hmm.
So to be clear, we won't pay out until the occupancy permit is in place, correct? The full occupancy permit.
Well, I think that's the question, right? The commitment was to pay when an occupancy permit was secured. It was not at that time stipulated that it was full occupancy or partial occupancy or anything of that nature. Either way, whether it's partial or full, those funds should be coming in short order. And if that full occupancy permit, because of tenant issues or leasing issues, I should say, present an issue, then the committee might need to convene to discuss that, because we should not have those funds withheld from our fund because for whatever reason they have had a longer than expected leasing period. So I just wanted to make sure that's on our radars.
Yeah, but it seems to me that, you know, full occupancy permit was implied, you know, when you say you don't, you would specify partial occupancy permit, but when you say occupancy permit, to me, that sounds like you have to have a full one.
Yeah,
so.
my primary concern is ensuring that the fund gets its payment as soon as possible. And so I'm sure that they will give us their reasoning or rationale.
Thank you.
Any other questions or matters on this item before Councilman Lavelle moves forward?
Yes, hi. Is the commitment document anywhere specifically that we would be able to reference that? What was committed at the time? And if there is documentation, would it, if it's already been circulated, could it be recirculated?
It would actually, I believe it's reflected. I'll need to go back and look, Brett, but I believe it's reflected at the URA board meeting and in our minutes, but I'll need to go back and find that.
Okay.
Yeah, you could also find it in the Hill CDC's weekend roundup that has been that was distributed at that time, but that may require more research time than you had allocated to that, Brett. But hopefully the URA can generate that documentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else for LERTA Fund update, I believe we can move forward with an update on the Hill Home Repair Program.
Thank you, Councilman. Good afternoon, everyone. So just a really brief update on the Hill Home Repair Program. So just a reminder that the money that was allocated is $465,000. So that's 20 projects that are $20,000 grants. So 1.5 of the projects are soliciting bids. Some homeowners chose to use their own bids. For whatever reason, those contractors weren't able to advance or opted out of the project. So we've 0.5 is a homeowner who had multiple contractors doing different projects on their home. So half their work is done. There's one specific thing that still needs done. 3 are pending closing. So this means the bids are complete. And we're just pending signatures, just making sure that grant agreement is closed, making sure everyone is comfortable with the bids, just that final step before construction. 8 are under construction and 7.5 are complete. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Questions?
Not question, but just a reminder and a request. May we please receive a list of the completed projects? I realize in the past you have said privacy was an issue, but for the sake of transparency and answering many residents, it would be very helpful if we knew the streets and the type of work at least. So, I mean, I realize this may be a repeated request from me, but it is something I encounter often, or a question I often encounter. Can we do that, Julia, please?
I'm going to defer to Alex here.
Alex, may we do that? I understand the privacy part, but for the sake of transparency, I understand where the questioning is coming from as well.
Yeah, I mean, disclosing the addresses and the names is, I mean, because we are a public agency, we have a constitutional right to, or responsibility to protect like the privacy of these homeowners who are seeking public assistance. So
I understand.
I mean, we can discuss internally about releasing the street name, but it's, I mean, it's difficult for us to say that like we can release these things because we don't want to violate people's privacy rights. And people did apply to to the home repair program on the reliance that this was private information. So that's kind of where we're coming from and wanting to keep this information privileged to the applicants.
I understand that, but also, the other side is with public funds, folks want to know where their money or where the money has gone. And I'm not asking that we identify any people at all. I'm just saying the street and the work that was done. That's all.
Okay.
So this is Reverend Grayson. My question is more.
We lost you, Reverend Grayson.
Can you hear me?
We can now.
My question is more of, I don't need to know streets. For me, it's more of one, like some sort of record to say what some things have been happening without getting details, that people know that at least some portion of the funds have been activated or in place. So kind of more of a PR release more than any details of the streets. I think people think nothing has been done. So to know that, 8 or 9 projects have been completed or so-and-so or in the mix, I think that's what I think people are asking me, has anything been done?
Is it possible or appropriate, Alex, to contact those residents who did receive work to see if they're willing to share information, whether it be pictures of the work that was done, like a before and after, that may not compromise their identity, or if there was anyone that would be open to giving testimonial to how this program has supported their home? I mean, have we considered that? If so, is that something that we could do? Because that might be the difference between not being able to publish anything versus, just getting the consent.
Yeah, I mean, if we have the homeowner's consent, that's something able to be shared. I think that might be a conversation that the URA wants to have internally about how we want to approach that, and kind of what other details we might want to release just to give a little more transparency to this. while also kind of balancing these privacy rights.
Mhm.
So we can definitely circle back on that and kind of send out information via email.
Okay, well, Alex, compromise. How about the neighborhoods, for instance, Lower Hill, Upper Hill, Middle Hill,
We can share that.
instead of
can-
streets,
Yeah,
instead of
absolutely.
streets. Give us, just something.
Sure, we can make sure that's shared with you.
I mean, I'm okay with Lower Hill, Middle Hill, just the neighborhoods, just to see where this is.
And we can, if you'd like, we can a little audit of the work that's done. So like 8 roofs or whatever, 4 roofs completed. If that is helpful, like, whatever the work that has been done of these ones that are complete, just not specifically, just like, so people have an understanding of how these improvements, what improvements are happening in their neighborhoods. We can share that because that protects privacy, but it is informative with the neighborhoods, if everyone's comfortable with that.
Yeah, I'd moved. I'm sorry, was somebody else speaking?
Yeah, I had my hand raised, but I guess
Go
people
ahead.
off the mic, and that's okay too. I just wanted to chime in because in our last conversation, we actually agreed upon a certain set of parameters, and that was one, because we already advertised and that we made it as a part of our agenda to choose people from different parts of the neighborhood, that we would then also advertise that this work had been done in different parts of the neighborhood and name them. We had already agreed upon doing that. We also agreed upon sharing exactly what Julia just said around, the type of work that has been done. And we also early on said that if residents felt comfortable sharing their story, and I think somebody identified at least 2 residents that they were enthusiastic and wanted to share their story. So I think, it's incumbent upon the URA to go ahead and ask all of the residents, if they want to share their story or part of their story. If there are pictures, even if they're close-ups, it doesn't have to be a picture of the house and the street and things like that. But if there's just some close-up of the finished roof, or a close-up of a completed wall, like all of those things are important and the images are important. So we agreed upon all of those things previously.
I move to require that any applicant consent to disclosure of their address solely to the advisory committee, not to the public, in recorded meetings to ensure accountability and performance measures for the program. Or if someone else could offer up that as a motion, if we're serious about accountability, as I'm co-chair of this
Is
meeting.
Alex still on the line?
I am. I mean, just
Alex,
to kind of,
does that bother or mess with any of the privacy policies?
I mean, it concerns me because we're essentially asking applicants to to forfeit their privacy right in exchange for assistance. I really think this needs to be something that's, if we're disclosing the identity of the homeowner, this needs to be as part of their consent, and we can't kind of tie their hands if they want to receive funding. That's sort of my perspective on this.
Well, what if we revise the motion a little bit?
Yeah, so well, let me get some clarity here, because I think what the motion, let me clarify, I'd like to entertain a motion as I'm plan chair in this meeting, so I won't actually move to one, but I'd like to entertain one. I have some questions about the privacy rights that the URA is striving to uphold in this particular situation. The applicant's information is disclosed to the Urban Redevelopment Authority, but the funding is provided from 3 tax bodies. What privacy rights, like, can you just clarify specifically what privacy rights you're concerned about, Alex, so that we can evaluate that as a committee?
So, I mean, generally there's 2 sources of authority that I'm looking at here. There's kind of the Pennsylvania Constitution, which courts have kind of read that there is this informational right to privacy, that even if public funding is involved, whether that's state funding or federal funding, that's not going to say like, hey, your privacy rights have been superseded because you're dealing with public funding. And there is case law to support this, and I'm happy to share a legal memo with the advisory board. But then we also have our kind of disclosure responsibilities under the right to know law as a public agency. So generally, we have a duty to provide records that are in the URA's possession. However, there are certain exceptions. One of which is sharing personal information related to personal home addresses, and then also information related to public assistance applications. And I kind of view these as, I mean, one, these are people's personal residencies, but then two, this is effectively an application for public assistance. So that's
When
kind
you
of
say
why.
effectively, do you mean that that's your analysis of it, or that it is?
I mean, that's my analysis of it. I mean, this is public funds going to support kind of home repairs.
Yeah, are they still public funds after payment? I think Lakeisha has her hand up.
Because I'm a little bit confused because I'm trying to sort of delineate that from the ways in which I see the URA publishing online and on your website, success stories about funding that you've given to folks to help them buy personal homes, and to open businesses. So I'm trying to kind of like, if it's a question of asking them to share the story and you're presenting them with the fact that they don't have to, but they can opt in, right? I'm just not understanding how that's different than the other things that are advertised as success stories from other programs that the URA funds, even though it's not necessarily the same pot of money.
Right, and I think with those, and I can't speak to how our project staff is kind of communicating with their applicants, but it is likely that, and the guidance that they've gotten from the URA's legal department is that, like, if they have somebody's consent to share these stories and they want to, that's fine. What we can't do is condition assistance based on sharing that publicly.
But these folks already got the resources, so it's not a condition, right? So we'd be asking to perhaps share stories of folks whose projects are completed. So they would have already gotten the support from a project that was important to the Hill District community. So we'd be reporting about the community to the community. Yeah, so I'm just not clear on how that's different.
Can I don't know how to raise hand, but can I comment?
Yes.
I believe that the most important thing about the disclosure is that the community knows that the funds are being utilized in the Hill District. And I think that can be accomplished by street and, without specifics. I totally agree with Alex in terms of disclosing people's personal information. We should try to avoid doing that as much as possible. But if we can let the community know and let the powers that be know that the funds are being utilized where they're supposed to be utilized, I think that should be enough.
And I think there are a few things at play here. One, the advisory committee ultimately is the responsible party from the community's vantage point for ensuring the use of these funds, right? So it becomes an accountability measure for us as a body, one. Two, we are acting on behalf of community and wanting to ensure that, as you mentioned, Richard, funds are going out, but it's hard to do that without accurate information. And I think that if we could talk about detaching name and so forth from address, then perhaps there wouldn't be privacy issues. I'm not sure. I'm much more concerned about the address and knowing where the funds were actually invested than I am like names or, like the depth of the scope of work or seeing pictures. So I think that we're speaking to that. And I think finally we're speaking to being able to evidence that funds were beneficial to the community. So, it makes it difficult because the money rests in a public agency. And what I'm hearing Alex say is that the URA is utilizing the URA's normal legal standards and metrics, even though the sources of fund didn't come from the URA in the first place. And I think that there's something to work through there and to figure out how we can get all of these things that we're trying to get, although the funds rest at the Urban Redevelopment Authority. With that said, we can take this offline to email, or the URA can come back with recommendations. But candidly, I think that it puts the committee in a difficult spot to be speaking generally about funds that we are responsible for administering and getting out to the community. I think we need to be able to measure specifically, and not, through kind of reporting, but through actual data. And right now we are unable to do that based on the information being provided.
And I will reach out, this is Julia, I'll reach out to the homeowners whose work is completed and ask them if they're willing to share their story and photos, and I will report back. Because if they give us consent and we have them sign a document, we can share it, but we need their consent. So I will reach out to those homeowners and let you know.
Okay, and for me, again, the stories are fantastic, but I would like to know the addresses of the homes that received investment. That's what I'm after, because again, I'm trying to assess the impact, the whole impact. The storytelling is important, but accountability is as important as marketing. Alicia, and I think we can probably move on if Councilman LaBelle is ready.
No, sorry, I thought you were gonna try another motion. Sorry about that.
You can if you like. I'm chairing, so go chair.
Do we need to at this point? I didn't think we did, but whatever you guys want to do.
If you'd like to, we'd be happy to entertain it. If not, we can move on.
Let's move on and see what we get back, because this is a repeated request.
It is.
And I'm just thinking, just give us the community, the work done, any level of transparency. I agree with the pictures and close-ups and things like that, and testimony as well. But really, I just think we need to know where this work is happening and what type of work. I've only heard a few things, but it's not official.
Yeah.
So
noted, and you're right. We have talked about this several times, Alicia. So I think we can all be more diligent between meetings and making sure those things get delivered. So.
So Julia and Alex, can you all get us the basic information that you talked about on this call and that we have discussed previously about where these repairs are relative to into the neighborhood, the actual numbers that were read off, and the type of work? How soon can you get at least that much information to the committee?
I can have it to you within 2 weeks.
Okay, and I'd like to put a motion on the table. What I would like, the motion I want is that on all of our future applications for Hill Home Repair, that there be a box that asks each applicant if they would like to opt in to share their information or their journey, or I mean, we can figure out the language, but it should be on the actual application, and it should be optional for them to opt in. And that way we won't have to kind of go through this whole process again. That's the motion that I would like to make. Does anybody want a second?
But can anyone second that motion?
I have a question. This is Britt. I like that idea. Would we be potentially be able to ask that or add as a part of the disclosure that are signed once an applicant is selected, so that it doesn't appear that that question has any influence on the actual decision process, but once an applicant is decided, then as a part of their closing process or the documents that they sign, we would then indicate that. So that way, if they opt out or opt in, it is after a decision has been made whether or not they will participate in the program.
Yeah, that's a great.
Councilman, you want to kind of work through that revision in accordance with procedures?
So, well, okay, so first, the first motion did not get a second, so it dies. If Brett wants to offer a second motion, what I heard is that once someone is selected, upon selection, as they sign documents, one of the questions at that time would be, are you willing to opt into sharing your information?
Yes, then I would second that motion.
Just asked a question about my motion, and I was willing to accept the friendly amendment, just to be clear.
I hear you, but it was never seconded.
But we were in the discussion. We were in the discussion part.
Let's move forward. That's not as relevant as actually entertaining it. So would you like to reoffer it, Kimberly?
Yeah, I would.
Okay, go ahead.
So I would like to make the friendly amendment that Britt offered, that after an applicant is selected, that a second part or some type of an addendum, once they have already been approved, to have on the application if they would like to opt in to share part of their story or their work, and or address, and that it would be totally up to them to participate in sharing that information.
I second that motion.
Yeah, and I consent to that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against?
Aye, sorry.
Any recusing or abstaining? Okay, the motion passes. All right, Councilman.
Thank you. With that, I believe we can move on to the project manager RFQ update.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
So for the project manager RFQ update, the URA posted the project manager request for qualifications on December 13th on the URA's bidding platform, IonWave Technologies. They will remain open until January 31st, 2025. So I believe that is not this Friday, but next Friday. However, we have not received a response as of today. If we do not receive a response, the URA proposes extending the deadline until applications are received. The RFQ shared with the advisory board, URA website, social media, and LinkedIn. We have gotten some traffic from these platforms. However, it has not translated to a submission yet. However, that is not uncommon from our experience. Oftentimes we do receive applications on the due date from our past proposals and qualifications that we've requested. Respondents can apply on our bidding platform, IonWave Technologies, but they can also just submit an application directly to me at my email, ghall@ura.org. The following bullet points are reminders for the committee. We've discussed this in the past. Project manager would report to a dedicated member of URA staff and co-chairs. The initial contract term will be 24 months at $80,000 per year. The scope of work includes, but is not limited to, application management and support, including application assistance, recommendations, and reporting. Seeking partnerships to deliver goals of the Greater Hill District Neighborhood Reinvestment Fund, and community outreach and engagement. I will pause there for questions and comments.
Any questions or comments? If not, I will simply ask that everyone, to the greatest extent possible, share this information, share the position with your respective networks. With that, we can move on to new business. And I believe we have one item under new business, which is regarding member appointments.
Councilman, would you like for me to go over this one?
Sure.
Okay, there are, as you all know, member terms that each of us has. And you will be receiving an email from URA staff with your respective terms and the status of them. We, in an effort to be both transparent and to utilize best practices, will also be sending a notice to make sure that everyone is clear that as a representative of an appointing organization, that you are appointed by the organization, that the board of directors and the senior most executive in order to be formally appointed to the committee. So if you have already received a letter kind of reappointing, so to speak, you will still receive that request so that you can ensure that your term has come both from the board of directors and the senior most executive of the organization that you represent. So that's the first thing. So please be on the lookout for a letter regarding such. The other thing is we are going to be working collectively to make sure that notifications go out sooner to expiring members so that the organizations have an opportunity to review internally and to appoint accordingly. So please know that you're going to be getting communication on that. And we do need everyone to act on it as quickly as possible, especially if your term is coming to expire or has recently expired and or you got reappointed and did not provide that documentation. Are there any questions? We just want to make sure we're utilizing best practices given the heft of our responsibility here, and this is an important one. So are there any questions that anyone has relative to this matter based on what I just shared?
Yes, Member, this is Britt. I have a question. With regards to the expiration for the term serving on this committee, and I will go back and review if it's in there, but just from my understanding, does that mean that once you've reached the expiration date that the organization must step down, or is it that they have to reappoint either the person representing them or someone else to represent them in the committee?
It's the latter.
Thank you. Okay. You saved me some reading. Appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. All right, thank you all for that. If you could please direct any questions that you have relative to that back to URA staff and to Councilman Lavelle and myself, that would be excellent. And please look out for the follow-up sometime within the next 5 business days.
So that exhausts our agenda. Is there anything else anyone else would like to bring to the table?
Yeah, I just have a quick question, and I apologize for being late on that first agenda item around the fund update, but I wasn't sure if it was covered there and I missed it. But that question we've been asking about some of the expenses that should perhaps have been expensed or are pending from the URA's admin fees towards the fund over the last couple of years.
Are you asking the amount, or if you're asking, have we drawn down on it? The URA has not taken any fees out.
Right. So it's kind of both questions. If there haven't been fees taken out, which was reported last time, what would be due to the URA from the fund based upon calculations that have, you know what I mean? The sort of hours.
I do not have that number in front of me. I'm not sure if someone from the URA does. If they do not, I will ensure that I provide that information to you all.
Councilman, this is Tom Wink. We'll work with you to provide that so that you can provide it back out to the full committee.
Okay.
Excellent. With that said, everyone, thank you for, your participation in this meeting. Councilman, thanks for making sure we got through this meeting quickly. We have a really aggressive goal this year to get somebody in place and to get these funds flowing. So I just want to applaud us for having, a relatively efficient meeting. We now have to move forward on getting those applications in. So we are going to need everyone to be working in their networks to make sure people respond. And you can respond via email. Initially, it was just on the website. And so now it is also via email. So we wanted to make sure that the portal was not a challenge for anyone in that application. But thank you all for your participation and the efficiency of this meeting.
I have one last item I want to bring forward, Marimba, which is I frequently, as I'm sure most of you do as well, get asked about what is happening with the LERTA fund, what is happening with the advisory board, and it's not sufficient. And I always answer the question and provide the information to whomever's asking, but it's also not sufficient or for us to say, well, these meetings are posted publicly. I know some people have actually watched them, but nonetheless, what people are asking for is for information to be shared out. And I think it's appropriate for us to do so collectively. So what I would like to suggest is, and I don't think it has to be anything long, but I do think we should put together an update that could be provided to the community. I know Marimba has a community meeting upcoming in, I believe, the second week of February. And I think it would be appropriate for an update to be provided there if she's willing. I think it's also appropriate for my office to send out an update as to what's happening. And if everyone agrees to that, I'd be more than willing to work with Marimba to put together a paragraph or two that summarizes where things stand with the fund so that we can indeed update and keep the community informed.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's much needed for no other reason, uniformity. Everyone has to be on the same page with the same message. And if you could be even more specific in the outline, if you could do sort of like talking points, so that we would be able to give quick answers, that are somewhat specific, and people will get the same answer from everybody. Because you could ask one committee member a question, and someone can ask another committee member a question and get two different answers. And a lot of it is due to opinion. So that's a great idea, Councilwoman. So the sooner you get that out, the better.
I just like to say I absolutely love that idea and was going to add, because I know that the consensus group is working together with the collaborative to put together a community meeting also happening in February. And as a way to maybe show up as collective, I was going to extend the information to this group to see if there could be representation from the advisory board. And then maybe, so it looks and appears as more of a unified front where we are giving the message and, as a collective insisting. I mean, I'm sure everyone may not be able to attend, the consensus group meeting or Hill CDC, but anyone that could and being there, strengthen numbers to show, and then again, to ensure consistent messaging. So I'll extend that whenever I have the final details for the consensus groups meeting, but remember, I would plan to be at your meeting and would extend the invite for any advisory committee member that could be there as well, so that, again, we're showing up as a collective and having consistent messaging.
Great, thank you. Please share the information and we'll share ours out. And if we want that on the agenda, I'm happy to add something, an update from the committee, the advisory committee, to the agenda. Thank you.
Okay.
Two questions. Go ahead, Councilman Lavelle.
No, I was going to ask, was there anything else that members wanted to ask? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I know that this advisory board was a carryover from the Hill Growth Fund, but the community did not get to decide who was actually, going to be the co-chairs. And are we going to be rotating co-chairs outside of yourself, Councilman Lavelle, or is Marimba just going to be permanently in place for years to come? What what
Marimba?
is the situation here?
I can't speak for Marimba, but I don't think Marimba will ever be permanently in place. The Hill CDC and the
Amen.
council district offices are both in place, so neither one of us will be permanently in place.
Yeah, but is there a term, for example?
There's the terms, so the co-chairs are the city council, District 6, and the Hill Community Development Corporation.
Right, so are there terms?
No, there
No.
are not terms. Those are the co-chairs.
Right, so my question to you, Councilman Lavelle, is one, the community did not make this determination. There are very real issues, as you already know. And, you know, when you said not everybody will be in place permanently, well, then how long? You know, I think that that's something that we should talk about and decide and present to the community.
I don't think we need to go back down through the history as to why the Hill CDC is the co-chair for this fund. It's because the Hill CDC took leadership to secure this funding for the community. And instead of putting itself as the recipient of the funds, thought that it would be appropriate to have the community governing the administration of the funds. So by virtue of the Hill CDC doing that work, the Hill CDC is the co-chair, and that is a result of the Hill CDC being responsible for the existence and delivery of the funding alongside Councilman Lavelle. So if there are no additional questions or comments.
All right, yeah, I wasn't finished. So you know, if everybody knows the history of the Hill Growth Fund, there would be no monies if it weren't for my work, right? And the work of Jake Malliance, state rep. And I'm sure Lavelle has also chimed in. So I just want to point out there's a level of hypocrisy here where those of us who have worked on the growth fund, we have term limits. And yet we have people from the community that have repeatedly asked to be on this committee, to be as a part of the Hill Growth Fund, et cetera, et cetera. And now you hear Marimba saying that because the Hill CDC, quote, did the work, as if it was a sole venture, that they deserve a permanent place over this fund. And I respectfully want to challenge that. And also just to point out that we have not had a discussion with the community about this. And there should be a discussion about the term limits, about the people who are on the committee, and about the co-chairs. That's only fair to the community.
So my response to that would be that's not totally accurate, Kim. One, this came up when the bylaws were written. This was ultimately a decision that was made by the URA board. So in order to change it, you would have to redo the bylaws and you'd have to get URA board approval. And two, this was actually discussed ad nauseum at URA board meetings when this was being set up by the community members.
With public hearings.
And who on this, who are members of this group right now, who were present besides yourself and Marimba?
I believe you were present.
I think I was present also.
At the time, Arby representing the consensus group was present. I believe Michelle Hardiman was present. I'd have to go back and review minutes to know all the members that were present, but there were numerous community stakeholders who came down to express their opinions and thoughts and concerns.
Are there any other questions or concerns that we can address today? Okay.
If not, thank you all for your time and your energy and your commitment to the community. It is appreciated.
God bless.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody.
Good day. Good night.